The big story here, which we didn't really talk about too much yesterday, but I think actually is, well, it's a bit shocking. Are you staring me down? Furious judge clears courtroom after Trump defense witness sighs and rolls eyes. You know what I think? Okay, so here's the story real quick. They called Robert Costello, who completely obliterated the prosecution's case. Former lawyer or legal advisor, depending on the reports. Some reports say he was a lawyer. For Cohen, saying Cohen had nothing. Cohen said he would lie. Cohen did this of his own volition. And what we learned from this is that if the defense is telling the truth, Cohen stole around $250,000 from the Trump organization without Trump knowing. The reimbursement for Stormy Daniels, Trump didn't know about. The $30K he stole and pocketed from the money that was supposed to go to Red Finch, Trump didn't know about. The tax reimbursement, they didn't know about. The tax reimbursement also shows that they thought they were just paying Cohen for his labor. Here's your labor plus additional for any tax liability that you may incur due to, taking care of these things or paying for services. And they had no idea. Now that's if the defense is telling the truth. When Costello comes in to testify, the judge basically refuses to allow him, which is crazy considering they let Stormy Daniels effectively accuse Trump of raping her. But then Costello comes up and says, I was his lawyer, here's what happened. And they're just like, shut your mouth. The judge actually yells at him. Like, it is unheard of. All these political commentators are and pundits on TV are like, a judge yelling at a witness like this is crazy. Clearly, what I see is Judge Merchan, he's on the side of the prosecution. No question. This is not a real trial. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Merchan was appointed for this. It wasn't through the traditional judicial process. That's what one report, I don't know if that's true.
I can't remember off the top of my mind.
Merchan was selected. He wasn't chosen by the normal process.
I might be getting my wires crossed here, but I know that Judge McAfee in Georgia, presiding over the Fulton County case, he was appointed, and this is his first time going.
And he's up for re-election today.
Up for re-election.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is it. The Trump team has rested. They've rested their case, and now what's going to happen is I think the judge says he's going to give instructions to the jury on Thursday. And then they're going to reconvene on Tuesday for closing arguments. I could be wrong because initially they said they would reconvene next week.
Yeah, they're going to reconvene on the 28th. So what the judge said was because we have Memorial Day coming up on Monday, we're going, and the defense is rested, rather than have, start summations now and have it get interrupted by the end of the court day. We're going to wait. You guys are going to come back. You're going to hear from both the defense and the prosecution back to back. I'll give you your instructions for the day that we think it'll take about an hour. And he says basically he doesn't think they'll start deliberating until the 29th, which is Wednesday. And he's saying it's to prevent a long gap between, the end of summations and deliberations, which makes sense. Initially, when I was reading it, I was sort of like, but you are creating kind of a long gap here. I guess we can't avoid it because tomorrow's Wednesday. They're typically off on Wednesdays, hypothetically, they could have summations on Thursday and start deliberations on Friday, but I guess that's not how he wants to handle it. This whole case is really interesting to me because so much of it just completely rested on the shoulders of Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, who's been convicted of lying under oath and of campaign finance and tax evasion. So he's got a background of financial crime, and he's been convicted of lying. And unsurprisingly, yesterday, he was once again, like, yes, I am a thief and a liar. And this is what the New York State had. There are other reports that talk about the fact that this case had come up and different people, including Alvin Bragg's office, had been like, well, we're not going to take it. We're not going to take it. They didn't take it until the end when there were all these other cases up against Trump. And I think that's because it's obviously not a great position to be in. I just don't know that Michael Cohen is the compelling link that they needed him to be to make this work.
I don't think that, I don't think Michael Cohen is a compelling link to make it work. I think that's probably pretty clear. I don't think that they ever had a strong case in the first place. And I think that that's kind of the situation with all of the cases. We were talking before the show started about the overall situation as to how all of the legal stuff is panning out against Trump. None of it is going the way that any of the Democrats would have expected, I think. And I think that if they look back now and they look back and they're like, these probably should not have happened. We shouldn't have gone through with all of this legal, all of the lawfare, because it's not working out, and the results are generally making people sympathetic to Trump.
Mm-hmm. One thing that was particularly revealing about Costello's testimony to Congress when Cohen was on the stand. Costello was on Capitol Hill talking to the weaponization subcommittee in a hearing about lawfare, and basically explaining that lawfare isn't always the court cases that end up on the docket. It's not always front page news. It's dangling a judgeship here or a pardon here in that smoke-filled room, right? All of those really funny tropes about what politics actually is. And Costello and his fellow witnesses kind of pointed out, like, yeah, to a certain extent, that's true. And so for me, right, I'm looking at this, regardless of how it pans out, because I think you and I agree, like, no one can actually read the tea leaves at this point on what damage this is doing to Trump and the damage it's actually doing to Biden's reputation. But, like, one thing is abundantly clear, and that's the Democrats view the process as the punishment, right? And you can draw this, like, I heard this funny comment today that was like, what's the one thing Ed Snowden, Assange, and Trump have in common? Not just a broad meta narrative, but like a very concrete thing. It's like all three of them charged with the Espionage Act, right? Like, you think Snowden and Julian Assange, like, oh, that tracks, you know, both smuggling state secrets or whatever, you know, of course, not actually. But Trump, with the documents case, charged with the Espionage Act. And so all that is to say, like, the state has been so clear in punishing those two men, Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, through a process, right? You see the Assange update earlier this week. It's the same exact way for Trump. And it's the same exact way for the attorneys that were in Trump's camp that were making, I think, pretty common sense legal arguments about the 2020 election and about possible improprieties and what the president's role is in correcting that, right? In the president's authority to interpret the Constitution for himself. Yes, the legislators and the executive and the Supreme Court all have the authority to interpret the Constitution. How else are we going to make laws or policies in this country if all three branches of government don't do that? But, you know, all that is to say is that those lawyers involved in the Trump case, like, the point was to punish the lawyers through the process, know that maybe they're not going to get convictions against them, and also to scare off any sort of legal help that Trump could get.
Right, and it's to damage their reputations. Because I think you're right, so much of this is about just, like, for Trump, the punishment being the process, meaning he's not on the campaign trail. And then we heard this over and over again. Well, Donald Trump, Joe Biden's out campaigning for stuff, and Donald Trump's in a courtroom. Because you guys put him there. And I think Trump did a pretty good job, or at least his campaign did, of being like, well, then we're going to make New York the center of this whole thing. We're going to be at fire stations. We're going to hold rallies more locally to kind of combat that. But ultimately, I don't know that the effect of sort of demonizing anyone who is tangentially related to Donald Trump, either directly or just like through a legal case or whatever, had the intended effect for voters. I think ultimately people are starting to feel fatigued, and I think a lot of people are more fearful of the government than Democrats really realize, and seeing the weight of having so many governments, state and federal, come after you is actually something I think that makes Donald Trump sympathetic to the voter, because they couldn't handle it, right? They don't have the financial resources or the influence that Donald Trump has. If the government did this to you, you would be in a worse off position. And so they don't want this kind of thing to be playing out over and over again.
I mean, it's weird when you've got even Bill Maher being like, yeah, Biden's a cadaver. This is it. USA Today runs an op-ed from some guy being like, yeah, Biden's got to drop out. Mm-hmm. There's no reality in which any sane person thinks Biden's an actual viable candidate. So once again, the only thing they have is Orange Man bad. Yeah. Only at this point, inflation is so apocalyptic. If you are a new voter, if you're a Gen Z voter and you were 18 in 2019, you have felt the sting of Biden's economic policies more than most people. I'm 38. It's been 4 years and we've seen prices go up. I only get Taco Bell every so often, but yeah, those prices have gone up. It's kind of surprising. But if you're, and so I've seen economic changes. I've been almost 40 years now. But if you're 22, this is your adult life. You're 18. You're now looking for some part-time work. Maybe you had part-time work when you were young, but I mean, like, now you're 18. You're an adult. You got more responsibility. You got to start paying the bills, and you see $1 cheeseburger. 4 years later, that same cheeseburger on average is now somewhere around $4. So it's like your money is being cut in half. or every other year or so. I mean, so this is you your money halves every 2 years.
Did you see that thing that McDonald's is rolling out the $5 menu, but it has to be subsidized by Coke because they just can't keep prices?
Subsidized by so Coke is
so they're partnering with Coke, and Coke is kicking in several $1 million so they can offer for 1 month like $5 meals, right? Like you can get a McChicken or a burger or whatever else for $5, but actually like they can't actually offer to you for $5 because inflation is so high.
Okay, so first of all, the market provides. Second of all, that's insane that the market has to do that. That the average meal from McDonald's is over $5 now. I mean, obviously it's about the value of the currency, and it's because of all the printing of money. And I'm going to do it again. Here we go. Like over $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities, $1 trillion every 100 days. Remember, 1 trillion seconds ago was 30,000 years before Christ. Like these numbers are absolutely beyond human comprehension. Like most people don't understand it. And unless they do something about the unfunded liabilities, unless they do something about Medicare and Medicaid, they're going to blow up the dollar. It is absolutely... There's no question that it will happen.
I hope that Phil says unfunded liabilities is on the official Timcast bingo card now.
It could be either, it could be it's unfunded liabilities or not discretionary spending is the stuff that they can. Mandatory spending. Unfunded liabilities or mandatory spending, same stuff.
Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe and we'll see you all there.